Do you ever struggle with painting flowers that look flat? Well then today's video is for you. First, I'm going to walk you through a simple demonstration of what can go wrong, and then I'm going to share with you how I create florals with depth and dimension. My name is Jessica, and I'm so glad to have you here. Let's go ahead and get started. One of the first things that can go wrong in your watercolor florals is losing your lights. You can see here I'm starting out with a flat wash of pink, and I'm filling my entire flower. Making sure that you preserve your lightest lights at the beginning of the painting process is essential for getting the widest range of values in your work. Then the second thing that can go wrong is not adding dark enough darks for your shadows. You can see I'm putting in a little bit of a darker pink here, and it's actually not bad. But then when you start to blend, if you're not careful, you can end up blending those shadows away. Part of the issue with this tulip is that everything has been painted so far in one layer. Now, it is possible to paint in one layer if you're doing a single small shape like this stem. But if you're painting a flower where the petals are overlapping, such as in this tulip, it's essential that you work in sections or layers. The other thing that can go wrong is relying on the outline of each petal shape or the details to try and achieve depth. Or in this case, maybe you try and separate those petals by pushing some of them back with darker pinks. You'll start to see an improvement, but the shadow colors are still pretty light, and some of these petals are still fused together. It doesn't matter how much detail you add to try and fix the situation, this tulip still looks flat. And so I'm going to guide you through the process that I use to paint a flower with depth. The first thing I do when I go to paint a flower is to find a reference photo that already has strong values there. In other words, it's got some nice, beautiful lights. As you can see in this photo, there's some areas that are almost white. Then it's also got some beautiful darks, and those darks are almost black. You don't always have to have this much contrast, but flowers with contrast in the reference photo are going to be so much easier to paint. Once you've identified the light and dark values within your photo, then it's knowing how to paint them. I like starting almost all of my florals by working wet on wet. So you can see I'm applying water to this entire flower. Then I'm coming in with this vibrant, beautiful pink, and I'm dropping the color in the areas where I can definitely see it's darker, and I'm paying attention to leaving my lighter areas light. Then when I want to add pigment here, I come in a little more tentatively. I'm even kind of painting with the direction of the creases and folds of this tulip. If you discover that you've lost your lights, you can also come in and do a little bit of lifting at this stage. You can wash and dry your brush. Here you can see I tap it on a paper towel, and then I can lift some of the pigment. Wash and dry, lift again, until I feel like I've got enough light. Then I can come back in and just drop a little more dark, still being careful that I don't lose my lights. Even if a flower has multiple colors, like this smaller tulip, I'm still trying to make sure I don't go too dark in this early stage. I'm repeating the same steps of first wetting my flower. I see some nice yellows here, so I'm applying it, softening the edges, lifting, because I want to keep that yellow color really nice, light and soft. The same thing is true as I come into these coral colors. I'm working fairly light at first because I know I can go darker later. While I'm working wet on wet, you can see I can also apply some pink, and I keep blending my colors around, making sure I'm light enough, soft enough. And because I'm working on a quality paper, I have quite a lot of freedom to play with my color. Then the key for going darker is drying everything. So I've gone ahead, dried my paper, then I'm coming in and I'm actually going to repeat my wet on wet layer using a darker, deeper, richer red. You can see I'm taking things a little more tentatively and really paying attention to where my lights and darks are in this flower. Now I go ahead and dry everything again, and I'm going to start breaking this flower into sections. The way that I do this is to work on one petal at a time. The reason drying is so essential, it's going to allow me to paint each petal separately without having them bleed or fuse together. If your paper is damp at all, you'll find your lines get blurred and fuzzy. And so as simple as it sounds, drying your paper thoroughly between layers is really essential for creating depth in your work. It was one of those things that once I understood this, I had so much more success with my watercolor florals. And again, you'll notice I'm being as careful as I can to maintain my lights as I build the darker parts darker. Once I'm happy with the colors in this petal, I'm going to go ahead and dry everything again so that those vibrant, deep, rich reds become a little bit more permanent. If I try and achieve too much in one layer, I can end up losing some of the details I've already achieved. So I'm going to go ahead and dry it, and that's going to give me freedom to work on another petal. So now that it is dry, I can come back into this smaller petal here and add those nice deep shadow colors. And you can see that petal is automatically getting pushed back and we're getting a greater sense of depth. One of the things I find helpful when I start working in these deeper, richer layers is to use a softer brush. I really like a firmer brush for certain techniques in watercolor, but when I start working in heavily pigmented areas, such as shadows, a softer brush can actually be helpful because it can help you avoid lifting too much of those rich, dark pigments underneath. Even with a soft brush, you can still end up with some lifting, but it will help preserve some of those layers underneath. Now, if you look over these flowers, you're going to see that whenever I want to push one petal further back than another, I put some dark where the edges meet. You can see that's true with this dark shape here. You can see it along this edge. And even right here, even though I'm using mid values, I painted this area darker behind this petal so that it would make this petal look like it's receding. Then this petal has the appearance of coming forwards. You can see how that by painting this shape here dark, these two petals immediately popped forwards and gave the impression that this petal is behind. You can see the same thing at play in this smaller tulip. To avoid that coloring book look, you can see this petal is a little darker than this one. This one is darker than the one in front of it. The same thing is true here, and even with this tiny little shadow shape here. This is a beautiful shadow, and even with it being hard-edged, it looks believable and allows this petal to pop forwards. And most of the time, when you look at your reference photo, you're going to see this happening in the shadows already for you. And so usually you can copy what you see, but it's just a helpful tip to know that if you do want to push one petal further back than another, you just darken where the edges meet. And now when you compare these two tulips, you can clearly see where I'm missing the lights, where I'm missing the darks, and even how those outlines were detrimental for creating depth. The key is relying on value transition from light to dark to give you your depth, and never that outline or your initial drawing. And now you can see why I was attracted to this reference photo. Those strong lights and darks provided exactly what I needed to create believable, realistic tulips with depth. And as a side tip, if you take your own photos to paint, the best time to take them is either at the beginning or the end of a sunny day. You'll generally get more contrast in your lights and your darks. It's true that overcast lighting has its place, but I'm so grateful that God has given us beautiful sunny days with light that changes from morning to evening so that we can observe and paint His creation at its best. If you're ready to achieve greater depth in your work and you'd like to follow along step by step as I paint these tulips, I'd love to invite you to check out my newest Etsy tutorial. It's about an hour long, and I guide you through painting the lights, the shadows, and the details of these beautiful tulips. All my Etsy tutorials come with long-term access so that you can work through them at your own pace. And if you'd like feedback or you have questions along the way, for those of you who are on my newsletter, you're free to reach out, share your work, or get answers to your questions. If this sounds like something for you, you can find a link in the description below. In the meantime, I hope these tips have been helpful for you and that you'll keep them in mind as you're looking for a reference photo for your next watercolor floral. Remember, the most important thing is to preserve your lights and then go as dark as you can with your darks. The details will be icing on the cake for a flower that glows with life. If you're looking for more watercolor tips, you'll want to check out my watercolor playlist where you can find more videos like this one. In the meantime, I hope this tutorial has brought a little taste of God's beauty and peace into your everyday life and that it's inspired you to continue enjoying your own creative journey. See you again soon. Bye!